So, hello everyone. Great to have you here. So, I'm Fabian, lead innovation consultant at Itonics, and with me today is my colleague Chris. So, Chris, do you want to say some words about yourself?
Sure, thanks, Fabian. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris, Senior Solution Engineer with Itonics. Hi, Riffy. Thanks for your message. Looking forward to having a nice interactive session with you today. And I think, Fabian, you'll give us a brief outline of what can be expected in today's session before we jump straight in. So let's keep it nice, short, and simple.
Sure, we'll do that. So, before we start, a little bit housekeeping here. So, if you want to ask any questions to us here, you can use the F&A section. So this is preferred way to do that because then we can also, for some questions, directly type an answer in while you're asking them and while the webinar is running. But also we will also pick up if there are any questions in the chat and we will collect them. And for some of them, for which we have time, we'll answer them afterwards. For those questions we don't have time on air to answer, we will provide some written answer afterwards also, and which will be shared with all of you together with the recording and together with the slide deck that we will present today. So the webinar here, it will be a little bit about our thoughts that we have at Itonics about the topic how to automate manual innovation tasks, but also include a product demo of how we implement that in our product and how we can do that. So this will be taken over by Chris. But in the beginning, I will start. And so let's dive into that. So if you have been part of last week's webinar together with Roman from Skoda, then you know that innovation at speed and innovating faster is one of the key things that we see, and that it's one of the key drivers that we see for competitive advantage of companies. So, and this is also backed up by a lot of research. Like this is some slide, or this is some study done by McKinsey. So what did they look into? They looked into fast companies that are innovating faster and companies that are innovating slower, and compared them based on some key performance indicators. And what they basically found is faster companies that innovate faster, they grow faster. Because when you bring products faster to the market, when you bring services faster to the market, then usually you have a monopoly in the beginning, you have some pricing advantages. So that's all really helpful, and that also translates into better financial performance overall. So also it's not only growing, but also pays off in terms of earnings. And what they also find is like companies that innovate faster, they are much more operationally resilient, which also makes sense because not just since the COVID pandemic, but also beforehand, we see if there's something happening in the external world, if the company is able to develop solutions to that also internally, then they can pick up on those changes much earlier and can kind of run also the internal operations more smoothly. So overall, innovating faster presents a lot of competitive advantage, but we also see that companies struggle a lot with that. And one thing that you see from the title here that we see, or one reason for that, where we see is oftentimes also how innovation professionals and how their time and how their resources are used and are put to use, and could there be more efficient ways to do that? And in order to jump into that topic, what I would like to do with you is at first have some small interaction with you together. And I would like to ask you one question. So you can answer this question by going to Slido and putting in the code that you see here on the left side of the screen. But you can also use the QR code to put your answers in. And what I would like to ask you here is, in your day-to-day work as innovation professionals or people working to fields adjacent to innovation, how much of your time do you actually spend on innovation work? So stuff like developing, evaluating new products, services, business models, generating ideas, all of that. So, okay, the first answer is directly less than 20%. So you can be critical for that. So you can say, hey, okay, there are, so we have, so you can be critical kind of working on reports and stuff like that. I would not counter innovative work. And then let's see where it comes out. So the golden middle is also appearing a lot here. So a lot of answers, 41 to 60%, 21 to 40%. Again, some less than 20%. One person also said 60 to 80%. So that's cool, but no one actually up to now said 80 to 100%. And this is something that reflects quite well with what we see also. So I will show you on the next slide another study that we did here on that topic. But definitely also, even for innovation professionals, it's oftentimes the case that they spend only a little of their time actually on really innovative work, which is part of that is necessary, I would say. So part of that is you cannot spend your whole day on creating new concepts and all of that. So some administrative work is needed, some operational tasks are needed, all of that. But what we see here, I think that's kind of an eye-opener still, because when you think about being an innovation professional or working on in R&D, working in innovation management, you would expect actually to do more innovating. And when I go to the next slide, so some polls are coming in, but kind of we have a quite clear picture now. You can still put in your answers. So we also share the end results of this poll with the slides together. But so this is something that we see here appearing from that. What we did is that in an own survey, we had asked several innovation professionals across different levels and basically asked them to allocate how much time they spend on specific categories of tasks. So this bar that you see and the dots, it's 40 dots, so 40-hour week. So how much time do you spend on different categories of tasks? And in dark blue, what you see, that's basically purely administrative tasks, like doing reporting, documentation, data consolidation, project management, all of that stuff. And for any role here, that's already a significant share of work. And then we have a lot of operational tasks, so desk and field research, product development, process coordination, troubleshooting, all of that, also significant share. And then strategic work, so like decision-making, opportunity identification, evaluation, stuff like that. So which oftentimes takes only a minor role in the work of a lot of innovation professionals. And what we see is right now in technical age, so we cannot say that every administrative work can be automated. So that's not the point that we want to make here. But we see across those different task categories, we see a tremendous potential for time savings based on the help of technology. And we see also the need for doing that, because when we look into some additional numbers around innovation management, so what we see is that oftentimes in the area of innovation, there's always some form of resource scarcity. So like you need to make the optimal amount you need to get the optimal amount of output from the input that you have. For instance, like one study quite recently from KPMG showed that most innovation management departments work with 10 or less full-time employees. So a lot of them, the bulk or the option was selected most actually altogether was between 2 and 5 employees. So that's really small teams, and that's teams at large corporations. So that's not as an SME where one person is working on that's the innovation management teams at large corporations that are responsible for shaping the future of those companies. And you see kind of oftentimes small teams. What we also see is another study from the Boston Consulting Group that oftentimes innovation professionals spend a lot of time on non-value adding activities. So not innovating, which kind of reflects also our study from the slide before and what you have told us. And what you also see is with the advent of AI, there is a tremendous potential to automate stuff, but also to speed up stuff. So we are not advocating to put the humans out, not at all, but we see there's a lot of potential that technology can bring in, not just AI, but also like digital platforms, having single points of truth, we come to that later, to speed up processes a lot. And right now with the current AI tools, for instance, Bain says that basically already 20% of work tasks can be automated without a loss of qualities, and they expect that to raise to 70% in 2030. And we see similar trends, and when we look into our client base, we see similar developments. And by that, we see also corporate innovation shifting, or kind of the mode of corporate innovation shifting from like push-pull and really engineering-focused operations like in the 20th century to now in the 2000s when open innovation came up and opening innovation workflows. We now see the age of augmented intelligence coming. And for us, this translates basically into three potentials: speeding up innovation processes and saving times, which you see here. So we see that in three areas, like on the one hand, time to insight. So how early can you pick up on external signals, on market developments, and how early can you process that information? How quickly can you do that? And that's first area. Second area, time to validation. So how quick can you be at defining new ideas, doing some research around that, but also do a testing for that. And then finally, time to money. So the whole process that comes afterwards, the whole execution, like your product development pipeline, the execution of transformation program, but also the marketing and the launch planning for products that we see can be sped up tremendously with digital technologies. And for all of those three areas, we would like to share the approach and also like solutions that we as Itonics provide here. And we will start with the first use case, which is time to insight. So how can companies pick up on external trends and make the company aware of them and also derive action plans for them? So we see a lot of potential here in three areas. First one, reduce information overload for efficient environmental scanning, but also like create trend and technology reports much quicker, but also centralize foresight intelligence on one single point of truth. And that's where I would hand over to Chris, and we have our first demo section in the product.
Wonderful. Thank you, Fabian. Great. So as Fabian outlined, and thank you very much for kind of setting the scene here, one main aspect of providing tool support within innovation should be, of course, to be an enabler in order to focus on the more strategic aspects of course, where you want to go with the information you have at hand. However, in order to do that, we, of course, first need to find the information at hand, and that's where probably most of our time is getting slumped in. So what we have developed is we have developed a centralized platform where we can find and collect all of the innovation activities, all of the innovation content pieces that are important to us as an organization. We democratize that data within the organization, meaning that everybody has access to it, and we can thereby define those areas that are interesting to us, so those consumer trends that we see, those technologies that we see on our markets. And now, of course, what we want to do is we want to further deep dive into these areas and kind of see, okay, what's out there. So let's take the example of, for instance, something like rechargeable batteries, and let's just presume or assume that we are now in a position of wanting to find out what's going on within this technological field and how or what that could possibly mean for us as an organization. So what that basically means is we have an overview of technology rechargeable batteries. This is an overview that you or we create ourselves, because this is, of course, our environment, so we contextualize it with information. And we then use that information to basically send it towards what we call our signals data lake, which is basically just a data lake of openly accessible information. So that could be news sites, that could be publication databases, that could be patent databases, openly accessible RSS feeds. And what we've already done is we've saved some time, because I don't need to go about searching the keyword battery technology within Google or any other tool, because it's automatically bringing in only relevant pieces of information for me with regards to the content piece that I've created. And of course, that's only one aspect, because now probably the most tedious aspect is cutting through all of these pieces of information, through all of these news items, through all of these patents, through all of these publications, and really finding out what is currently moving the needle within our market environment and what really could potentially be relevant for us. In order to do that, we have enhanced our toolkit with a certain set of analytical capabilities, which I just want to briefly outline here. we have developed a method of how we can actually ingest openly accessible information and track how it has developed over time with regards to publication spikes in, for example, this case, news about the topic at hand, so rechargeable batteries. And of course, that already gives us a great picture of what's happening, but that doesn't necessarily give us a picture of the important things that are happening with regards to these spikes. So what we have additionally done is we have created something which we call key events. Key events are automatically tracked and clustered pieces of information that have led to either increase or decrease. There's also value to be found, of course, in decreases of information with regards to a certain topic. So in this case, we can actually see that in this particular technological field, we've had a key event in this time frame. And of course, now I, as a user, don't necessarily want to be sitting in front of my screen the entire day looking at this graph, kind of figuring out, okay, when's the next key event popping up? And that's the next aspect that we have, is you don't need to be active in the platform to actually receive or to actually have this mechanism take effect, meaning that I could have just stayed offline, I could have watched that element, and as soon as a key event had taken place, I would have been informed that I could have jumped in, meaning that I didn't have to have my eyes peeled to the screen. I could have focused on different tasks at hand, and as soon as something happens, I can go back in and actually then look at that particular key event. Now, as soon as I select that key event, I will already have kind of digested the signals that we scrape in, and from 4,000 that we had in total, reduce them to 318. And then, of course, we want to cluster these signals and make sure that we only look at those signals that could be classified as strong signals. So not necessarily signals that are weak with regards to their meaning, with regards to their actual drive behind a key event, but those signals that we could aggregate up to a strong signal. So we have developed an additional feature which actually does exactly that. For you, we look at the signals that lead to a key event, and we then cluster them and try to find topical focuses within them, within what we call the top events or the strong signals here. So what you can see here are actually those pieces of information that have led to that, or that have mainly led to that key event, meaning that we've already got them clustered and we've readily got them available. So if we actually look at them and just take a brief look, can we see? All right, so sodium-ion batteries are being mentioned quite a lot. So what we could now deduct from that is, of course, that research within sodium-ion battery technology, I think I just saw with regards to lithium-ion technology, is making some waves. So for us, that could be a topic that we don't have on our screen yet. So I could select that, take a look at it, which would then automatically show me a summary of the underlying signals, which is automatically aggregated. So our platform actually does that for you based on the underlying weaker signals. And I could then create that immediately to my platform as a new technology, a technology application, or a field that we should be looking into. And that, of course, then can in turn also be exported or could be placed on any type of visualization that could also be exported that you could use as a report on a certain topic that you would distribute to your stakeholders or anyone that is interested or that has access to the platform. And that's how we can very quickly deep dive into topics without needing to put too much effort into it. We can, to sum it up, be automatically alerted about key events. We can make sure that we keep up to date and only actually focus our time on research when we actually are alerted by the platform that there's something interesting that has happened. With that, Fabian, let's take a look at the next use case.
Yes, perfect. So let's say you have used Itonics to get to insights quite quickly. Then we have the question what to do with that. So usually in the innovation process, then a phase of ideation comes in, phase of design thinking, so whichever methodology you use. But it's generally about activating human creativity around a specific topic area and coming up with solutions here. And then also testing the solution, validating them, and having a validated concept that you can give into product development. So what do we see here is the technology has a lot of potentials also here, like first one, enhance human creativity with a Gen AI powered toolbox, because Machine or artificial intelligence, while we don't advise it to replace humans, it can, based on the information processing capacity it has, can bring insights and it can bring ideas and can also cover some blind spots that humans may have. And it can also speed up processes like idea generation and all of that. So also then what Chris showed here, like everything that he had in the strong signals for scanning a specific technology, you can also use to validate your ideas. So look into a specific idea and see what's happening out there in the world. But also then having a system that helps you streamline and systematize your innovation campaigns, and kind of going away from paperwork, going away from having that on different applications, on different platforms with a lot of documents flying around. And that's what we want to show you here. So Chris, back to you. What's about ideation in Atonics?
Wonderful. Thank you, Fabian. Let me just take over the screen again. Okay, what about ideation in Itonics? Let's maybe keep this example of sodium-ion battery as something that is apparently impacting the energy storage industry. Not an expert in that field, unfortunately. However, I can become an expert in the field by actually using the tools that I have at my disposal. So what I can actually do is I can now start saying, okay, this is a technological field that we don't have too much knowledge in, or that we don't have any, let's say, stakes in. So we need to kind of create stakes in it by ideating and finding out, okay, is there something that we can actually do? So what we can do within the same platform, because of course it is a centralized innovation management platform, is we can now start running an ideation campaign. Now, an ideation campaign, as the name already says, it is a campaign where we want to involve multiple users. So these types of elements, as we create them, the tool needs to have certain, let's say, funnels that ideas or projects that we want to ideate upon get funneled through. So we provide workflow capabilities, we provide workflow blueprints that you can choose from, and I could now choose to create a design thinking challenge, or I could have just used a simple idea funnel from submission to run. And then what I can do is I can start creating this particular campaign. So I can actually start contextualizing it with information. Sodium ion applications for household items. All right, that's going to be our campaign. We're just going to assume to be a manufacturer for household technology. I've added a quick summary of the campaign, and now I obviously want to flesh it out a bit so we can actually use smart features that will actually use this as an input. So basically the title and the short summary as a prompt. And as soon as I hit create, what will happen is this campaign will be automatically created by the platform, and I can now tell the system in what way I want to have content generated based on those entry prompts, i.e. the title and the abstract. So I can say, okay, let's use the why, how, what methodology, and let's say, okay, R&D departments of the household, of a household appliances manufacturer. Something like that. Perfect. And what it will now do is it will take my initial input and it will start curating a description automatically for this stakeholder group. I can proofread that, I can regenerate it. We'll just trust it for now, for time's sakes. The same mechanism then also applies, of course, on top tagging, which is very important for a centralized information repository, because we can use tags to then compare data across different data types. Can also use some little features to actually create some header images. Let's see what it comes up with. A sodium ion battery in a digital art style. So that will basically then create an image set for me that I can then choose an image from to kind of make my campaign landing page that I'm creating a bit more pleasing, I would say. Right, okay. Well, could have probably prompted that a bit better. Let's just use one of them, and that will be added here. And now we have very quickly, through the use of smart features, fairly simply created a campaign. And I can now actually do the following, because one thing that's always a bit tricky at the beginning is to, of course, get people to enter or to submit ideas into a campaign, because no one wants to take that first leap of faith. So what we have actually also provided is to then also not just enrich your landing page for your campaign by auto-creating descriptions for you, you can actually also auto-create ideas that you can then use as, let's say, the starting point, right? So we can again say, okay, create ideas for the household appliances area and R&D departments as a target group. And then in the background, it will create some sets of ideas for me whilst I can flesh out my campaign with the administrative tasks, I would say. So what type of campaign we want when we want to actually start that campaign, and who I want to have to be, for example, a campaign manager that can actually contribute together with me to making this campaign successful. So I'm actually very, very quickly, very, very simply creating a campaign that then allows me to start funneling ideas through my process. And as soon as I have that campaign created, I can then actually start ideating in that. So that means that users can come into the tool, they can submit ideas into our ideation funnel, and they can make sure, or we can make sure, that these ideas then actually also get processed through the funnel. And one very important aspect of that is, of course, initially having ideas evaluated towards their level of sensibility, for example. So the system has actually already created the ideas for me, right? Some basic ideas at the end of the day that I can use. Of course, the goal should be to get your experts involved, for them to submit ideas. And as soon as they submit ideas, what you can also do is you can auto rate ideas for basic, let's say, sanity. So you can have the system rate the criteria that you can set for each individual campaign, due to the fact that we actually used a campaign blueprint, meaning that we actually have used something that we as Itonics provide for you. We didn't have to really do anything with regards to setups, because it's already been set up for us. So what I can now do is, from this initial setup, I can choose the evaluation criteria that I want to have this smart feature to rate, and it will then also auto rate them for me in the background, which means that for these different rating criteria, in conjunction to me as a user being able to rate them throughout the different steps in my process, I will have computational support, let's put it like that. And all of this, of course, with the aim at making it as fast and efficient as possible. If we have a great topic to ideate in, we of course also want to make sure that we get something churned out quickly, ideally, of course, also in high quality, and then lastly, also getting users involved and making sure that we have tools at hand that help us to evaluate and very, very diligently funnel all of the ideas that we receive through the processes that we set for our ideation campaigns. And now, of course, the question is, what happens after we ideate it? What happens with the portfolio aspect, so the projects that kind of tumble out of these ideation campaigns? And I think that's the last use case, Fabian, after which we'll jump into the Q&A session.
Yes, that's basically where the PMO work and all of that comes in. So ideas have been selected. There are some concepts. Now it's about putting them into reality. So, and what we see at a lot of our clients, a lot of companies also is, again, used with very different systems, sometimes still paperwork, sometimes done with sharing some files on a lot of different data points or a lot of different SharePoints. So a lot of unconsolidated data is here a huge challenge that we see. And that's both a challenge that we see at the project level, and where we say, okay, having a good digital platform, having some functionalities around that can speed up collaboration, but also the general process work a lot here. On the other hand, it's on the more higher level, like program portfolio level. So basically every portfolio manager we talk to, innovation portfolio manager we talk to, is like, okay, getting really insight on what's really happening in the company and getting a really good view onto that, and being not needing to consolidate a lot of information from a lot of different sources is a huge value. And that's basically a lot of the stuff that we see that can help you also then in the commercialization phases, but also in the execution phase beforehand, get products faster to the market by cutting a lot of time there. And how that can be done, Chris will show you now in the last demo section. And so I hand over back to Chris.
Wonderful, thank you, Fabian. So let's jump back into the tool. And let me just show you what we can do. Now, where did we start off? We started off at a field that was interesting for us, battery technologies. We found a sub-technology, sodium-ion battery appliances at the end of the day. And we wanted to ideate within that area because we didn't have any capabilities. So now we just assume that we have successfully concluded our campaign, and we want to now hand over some of these ideas into actual project mode. And what we then also provide is certain PLM capabilities. At the end of the day, it's all about making the data transparent and available, of course, meaning that we then provide the ability to not just track your insight and the subsequent idea that drops out, but you can also visualize and track and manage all of the projects fairly quickly and easily that drop out of your idea campaign. So what we see here is, at the end of the day, a Kanban board visualization, which just shows us all of the projects that we currently have based on maybe our strategic ambition. In addition to the phases that we have, I have all of the information for the projects that I'm running here. And I, of course, also have the relationship back to where it originated from, in addition to all of the information. So if I scroll down, a lot of information here, then you will see that I have relationships back to ideas, technologies, trends, or just general small pieces of news and insight that have led to this project actually coming to life. And then on top of that, I of course want to make sure that I am tracking how my project is performing, or not just my project, how my overall portfolio is performing. So we need the possibility to kind of create these reports fairly quickly and fairly simply. So what we believe in is that, of course, this needs to be as intuitive as possible. The only thing we need is the data. Where we get that data from doesn't really matter, whether it's manual, whether it's by input, whether it's by integrations, etc. As long as it is in the platform and we can relate it back to our idea management approach, we can also compare it, right? Because we can say, okay, this particular portfolio dropped out of our ideation activities, and now what we want to ensure is that it is performing well within the matrices that we are looking at. So whether that's cost, the CPIs, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, fairly quickly create dashboard views that the platform automatically creates for me based on the data that we have in this sheet view. And I can then use that for my reporting. And due to the fact that I have my data in the centralized storage, I can then, of course, also use advanced filtering capabilities to adjust these pieces of information. So what I could, for example, say is, I could say, okay, show me all of the projects that are related to a specific campaign, thereby adjusting the view that I have here to only projects that have dropped out of a specific ideation campaign. Or, of course, I could say, right, I'm not really focused that much or bothered that much with regards to ideation campaigns. What I am bothered with is, of course, how my portfolio is performing. Because if Chris, my boss, his name is Chris, if Chris comes asking, then of course I need to be able to actually provide him with some context. So as soon as I apply a filter, because of course my piece of information is here as a data property, then what happens is that automatically this list gets updated to only the projects where I am assigned as a project manager, and I can then use these automatically created reports and dashboards directly as a mean to update Chris on what's going on. And all of this is, of course, then transparent, it's reportable. I can provide it to my stakeholders or my management, and I can do that not just for my overall project portfolio that we're looking at, but I could do the same for my entire innovation portfolio, meaning the research that we do, the ideas that we create, and the projects. So we have it end to end, we have it all in one tool, and we have the ability to cross-relate, reference it back, and bring in that red thread that we're looking for and make it transparent, available. And again, as I mentioned earlier, democratize the way we work on innovation data. I think that's given a good overview. It's taking a bit longer than expected, so thank you for bearing with us. So Fabian, any words from your side before we jump into some of the questions that we've received?
No, I can only thank you, and I would basically go ahead with the questions, because those are already some detailed questions about stuff that you've shown us. So, for instance, how granular can the topics get that you see in the signal scanning and that are produced here by our AI?
Yeah, so fairly granular. It depends on the information that you input. So the way we process, or the way we actually get the data into the signals feed, is based on the content that you input on the element, so on the landing page of your piece of information that you have created. So let me actually just reshare my screen to give you some more context, and let's take the example of rechargeable batteries, which we used initially. And let me just share my screen 1 second. Go. There we go. Right. So what we do is we basically process all of the information that we have here, which, by the way, is also configurable to fit your data model, for example. We know that not everybody describes technologies the way we would describe it, or I don't know for you, Fabian, but I've never seen one of our clients describe the technologies exactly the same as another one would. So what we do is we process this information, fairly straightforward, I would say. We derive keywords or key terms out of these pieces of information, and we then kind of look at, and of course, if there's multiple key terms mentioned multiple times, we assign a weight to them, so we vectorize them basically, and we then create search queries that we send towards the data lake, so the signals tool that we own. So we actually own what pieces of information are in that, or what sources are in that data lake, which in turn then returns only those pieces of information that fit the key terms that have been generated from the content that you have, right? Which ensures that at least you've already kind of filtered down your data lake. And you've probably already guessed it, it's fairly, I would say, comparable to search engine optimization. The more precise you are, the more keywords and the more granular keywords, because you might be a subject matter expert, you provide in these element profiles, the more granular your searches will become. And of course, also probably the more you will either broaden your search horizon or kind of filter it down. On top of that, just to maybe give you that as context, we also provide explicit searching, where you can actually create queries based on your own search terms, and you can then also visualize the same tool sets, but of course you can't be automatically alerted to keyword searches that you do ad hoc on a daily basis. And I think also one question that I saw, which wasn't in the Q&A section, which I just want to reference to here, is the question on how do we make sure that we don't duplicate data. Well, with publications, that's fairly simple. Every publication is part of a journal, so there's a unique number assigned to it. So of course we've pre-filtered information before we actually scrape it into the tool, meaning that if there's a unique identification or unique identifier, sorry, not a unique identification, if there's a unique identifier on publications specifically, then we will of course not add them twice or 3 times or 4 times in the signals feed. The same also goes for patents, obviously, and for news items, we of course are very reliant on the way that news sites actually provide the data to us.
So now you have basically already answered a part of the question from Mark, because he's asking, where does the content come from?
Oh, right, perfect. Yeah, so the content comes from, well, I call it the signals tool. I mentioned it's a data lake. At the end of the day, it's a tool that we've built ourselves. It just summarizes different sources that we add to it. So that means that we define what's part of that. That could include patent databases such as the USPTO or research publication sites such as OpenAlex. So because we have sole ownership of that, we can actually also update that with additional sources, the only restriction that we have is that that information needs to be publicly available, so not hidden behind a paywall at the end of the day. But yeah, we're quite flexible. I think there's, as I said, there's over 47 million data endpoints. I don't know them all by heart. But yeah, there's more information on our website if you're interested in that, with regards to what those sources actually look like. Yeah, you can find out more there.
Perfect. And then again to the signal speed. So Soren asks, what defines a key event? So probably how are they extracted and kind of what's the structure here?
Yeah, so I'm not going to go into the mathematics behind it. Again, that is described quite well in our knowledge base, so I would refer back to that. However, basically what we do is we just look at certain percentage increases or decreases, and also over time. So if there's, let's say, a radical increase on a day where you, for instance, have, I don't know, 500 publications for a certain topic, then that would be classified as a key event. Or if you have a gradual increase or decrease over a prolonged period of time, that could also be classified. The exact kind of calculations and how we normalize that, don't know that by heart. We need to check the technical documentation on that, but that is again described quite well in our knowledge base.
Okay, great. Then we are through the questions. So thank you all for participating, and also thanks for the question. Really interesting and great to have such a good engagement here in a webinar like that. So if you are interested more than in what Itonics does, you can, on the one hand, visit our website, have a look into it, but you can also contact me and Chris. Also using the QR code here, so you can talk to one of our experts about specific knowledge about the software, but also if you are interested in more general exchange about innovation management topics and what do we see as best practices. So if you're interested in that, feel free to contact us also via LinkedIn. And then it's basically from us to say, keep innovating. It was great to have you here and hope to speak to you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one. Bye.